Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wells Wall Street. We have Quant here on today's video, QNT on the exchange. Before we do that, we're going to go through a few topics around BIS and Quant in itself and what we think is going to be coming throughout this year and the next in terms of CBDCs and where Quant fits in with that. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Before we do go check out our other videos. We are trying to play catch up, as I said a couple of videos ago. Work is going crazy, so let's jump straight into this one. So BIS, we know from last year we covered the topic when the BIS announced that a London innovation hub would be opening. So this was an article that we saw and reviewed last year. Very exciting stuff. I think it was the second or third or something hub center that has been opened here in the UK. One in particular of interest for this one was around the finance aspect of the country and Bank of England's critical role as an innovator in responding to the challenges and opportunities of the digital world. So there's loads of stuff going on around that. If you remember from those videos, do go check them out. It's worth documenting the historic background of this situation. Of course, since then, we have been covering ridiculous projects such as Helvetia, for example, quite recently. Very successful and has been concluded, taking part in Switzerland, but obviously involving a multitude of banks around the world, including the Banque de France and a few others as well. We also did cover Jura as well, I think towards the latter stage of last year. But some really interesting developments going across other aspects of technology and infrastructure, being powered by blockchain, being powered by data protocols and things like this. I'm very interested in this one in particular, Project Genesis, prototype digital platforms for green bond tokenization. Now, this is going to be really interesting if this is to do with the things like, for example, Energy Web Foundation, Power Ledger, which we cover quite a bit. Talking about the CO2 emissions in terms of things that go on in the world in general, from development of engineering, infrastructure, whatever it is. But I'm really interested to see this tokenization aspect. Tokenization, guys, within energy is obviously going to be extremely popular and massive demand in terms of what can be done through blockchain moving forward. So I'm really excited to see the development of that as we go forward. So do keep an eye on the BIS website. It's very informative, very interesting to see what's coming. Of course, there's loads of stuff here about cyber attacks. We saw cyber security as well. We thought quite interestingly the other day, I think we found an article a couple of months ago about testing of cyber security attacks. And of course, we've seen in the news recently about developments going on with Ukraine and Russia, and this is going to create a cyber attack, blah, blah, blah. Don't follow the narratives of that, guys. Just have a real depth in view, like what is actually going on in the background, because these things are always tested. These things are always ongoing. It's not a strange thing to just occur out of nowhere. But the narratives on the media suggest things when actually in the background, something else is completely different going on. So that's really interesting. But back to the topic of CBDCs, we know that Quant has a very informative aspect of this technology and DLT system going forward with the likes of Ethereum, with the likes of Consensus, part of the same sort of company, if you like, using the LAC chain, LAC chain. This is to do with Latin America, very powerful blockchain technology being built over there as well as it is across the world, really. But the most important thing about CBDCs in general and the way that it's going to work financially around the world to build better cross-border payments, reduce interest, reduce the cost and fees of international funding and costs and things like that. Blockchain is going to play a gigantic part in this, and everyone around the world is working very closely together to bring this into more fruition, bringing it together quicker. I quickly very much like to talk as well about the open finance aspect, about Project Nexus, for example. We talked about that previously. Is Nexus like the killer of a lot of these blockchains that we invest in? We covered that last year, of course. Still ongoing. Look at all these. Payment synchronization being done at the London hub that we just spoke about a minute ago. Upcoming. So no full details of that yet. I'm really keen to see when that is. But for sure, Quant is in the background helping with all of this. It's very interesting to see so many developments and conversations around the likes of Ripple, around the likes of Stellar Lumens. We talk about Zimfin a lot. But in my opinion, Quant, and this is me personally as well, because I, to be fair, have not really focused on Quant as much as I should have over these last 12 months. I paid the price of missing up on the big bull run that we had towards the end of last year. And of course, indeed, coming recently down to the lower prices, which we'll go on to in a second. But my point being is that Quant is a substantial player when it comes to CBDCs, building the partnerships, building the integration with a multitude of other phenomenal powerhouse blockchain technologies. Look at that, even EOS is on here. I remember when I was at university, probably about 10 years ago now, I just finished university. I kept getting emails to invest in Bitcoin, and I think it was either that year or the year after about EOS, and I kept getting these emails. I thought, this is a scam, nonsense, and here we are, 10 years down the line. If only I had the vision more so back then like I do now. But for sure, I'm sure many people got invested in these kind of technologies early on, and very cool to see the fruition financially that people are getting out of that. But what I would like to very much talk about more so moving forward this year is the CBDCs aspect, because I do think that this year is going to be a lot of testing for sure in the background. We're going to see probably a lot more media attention around this as well as all the usual other narratives around the world. But you've got to think about the topics, for example, green technology, faster payments, faster economies, building economies. Look at how Africa will build over these next few years using blockchain, getting ahead finally where it should be up there amongst the countries that have excelled financially and this, that and the other for one reason or another. But I'm really pleased and excited to see these countries across the world developing faster and giving the people a level ground, which is something I haven't seen in my lifetime. I've always seen poverty around the world, unfairness, inequality, and I feel hopefully there's obviously the centralized aspect and the decentralized aspect of the world, but in my opinion, I'm hoping that these go into the right avenues and we see more better fairness around the world. So let's see how that plays out, of course, but do keep an eye out on all these kind of projects. Like I said, Quant very heavily involved in the background. Do check out the CBDC white paper. Very, very interesting read from Quant here, implementing a CBDC. So this was done in November, but I've read pretty much 3/4 of this now, and it's really interesting to think about it, because how much effort and how much technology and how much testing needs to go in the background for this to actually really work, and not just work internally within like one country, but across a multitude of countries around the world. Of course, tracking traceability with CBDCs is one big factor, the removal hopefully of fraudulent activity, money laundering, and things like that. So a fairer payment as well from a trade perspective. Really interested to see how this all goes about. But I just feel like this year and next year are going to be really critical years. And we know from the previous video that we did around BIS, there is clearly a target of 2025, I believe, or 2024, to have everything up and running, ready to go. All those people listening to David Icke in 2015 when he's talking about universal currencies, universal financial system, well, he's the one laughing now, I guess, because it's coming into fruition for sure. And people are finally realizing, getting a lot more mainstream media attention than it used to. But I, for one, am very excited to be in this space and to see where it all goes. Let's take a look at Quant before we finalize the end of this video. As you remember from the few days back, if not a week or so ago, we did a video talking about our entry points for quant, which we didn't have in our portfolio before. We managed to get them near this 115 mark, but we did anticipate it coming down lower, which is why we drew these original boxes in as opportunities for dollar cost averaging purchasing on the way down. As we anticipated, coming down to that kind of 104 mark, I did purchase more here, and I certainly did indeed purchase more just under that $90 mark as well, hitting the top barrier. Now, the next question would be, ideally, where are we going from here? Well, the answer to that is very much dependent on other market trends, as well as, of course, for quant in particular, the huge developments going on with CBDCs and the background methodology around that as well. So what I would be interested to see is if there are potentially a couple more opportunities for leverage failures, for example, derivatives in the market, to pull us down perhaps one more time for the final correction before we take ourselves up. Now, that's being a bit selfish of me because I have managed to accumulate a few quant in this rundown for sure, and I'm very pleased with that acquisition, and I'm looking forward to the future developments. But I have indeed been keeping a load of USDT back for potential lower regions. Like I said in previous videos, that's not to suggest that quant is a terrible project, but we did emphasize for those that didn't watch the last video about this whole operation here from this $99 mark onwards from, say, July last year. We had major price discovery mode, loads of narrative, loads of cool news coming out. Then we've had the tail down, coming back into this almost like where we should be in the reality of quant's price right now. So we're now touching up on these really critical areas, bouncing around this $100 mark. At the moment, looking quite strong. I think earlier today we were opening $97. So we're at the moment of a high of 107, traced back to 102. So we're already seeing some very nice resistance at this $100 mark. If we can sustain that over the next few days, for sure, we may start seeing a nice wave pattern back upwards. But I'm still on the aspect in my mind that this straight trading is quite an interesting area, not just in quant, but many other projects as well, because you just don't know. There's clearly not enough confidence just yet to push everything into a forward momentum. Everyone's been paid now, probably, or certainly have been in this next 24 hours as like the last sort of final paydays for most people. We've had the back of the holiday festive periods. We have Chinese New Year coming up as well. It will be very interesting to see the reaction around the world of that too financially, because that does tend to go quite quiet for a couple of weeks, especially from the factory perspectives, manufacturing and export and this, that and the other. So it'll be really interesting to see. And of course, you've got the tax year ending, particularly here in March in the UK. I'm not sure what it is like for other countries. We've also had, as of yesterday, the deadline for UK tax from last tax year as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see the institutional money flow, in my opinion, as well as retail investors. But look at this. This is very much spiking now. We're literally on the tip of the iceberg, potentially switching over into a bullish momentum on quant. But I'm still keeping a tad bit of hope, if that's what you want to call it. I wouldn't call it hope because we've had a good run so far anyway, of a potential downturn. Just one final one. I would very much welcome that selfishly, but equally I would love to see for everyone out there that has been accumulating around these areas. I know a lot of you got excited with our tail down buying positions. I'm sure you'll want to see some nice returns on those in the coming months for sure. But on the RSIs are looking strong as well. If we just look at the development, it's a bit like a weather pattern, isn't it? So we're looking at kind of like the 18th of January, and you see on the left-hand side here, we've got the 28-day, 14 and 90. Don't ask me why 90's there. It's moved itself. It's very annoying, but here we go. But over these last few days, we've seen the RSIs slowly but surely creeping up. In my opinion, this is still not financial advice, but a great opportunity and area to be purchasing quant with a limited risk on the downside, and more opportunity for the uprise for sure. Very, very nicely poised on that 90-day at 44. So as you know from previous videos, I do like these 40-ish marks on particularly the 14 and 28-day marks for short-term gains. But we've seen that creep lower and lower below 40. I mean, especially down these areas. There's beautiful hotspots here for sure to be purchasing. Some quant here like $87-89. I think that 89 or so was where I purchased a few there. So I'm looking forward to seeing the development. But as you can see, the sell-off wave is coming to a close. Let's see if there's any sideways traction, if there's a bounce off here on the MACD. But we're more importantly as well seeing development very closely around this area of $100 as a support line. So let's see if we close above that. It's now entering our lower region of where we were making some purchases about a week or so ago. Let's see how we play that out. So they're the two mindsets I have, is that this is looking positive, but I'm thinking that if we get sideways trading, it gives more opportunity for the leverage failures to come in on multitude of assets, potentially including quant, but mostly is usually Bitcoin that kicks off the downside. That's where I'll be biting for sure, down at these lower regions. However, if we do some sideways trading, I may be tempted to get a few more and still leave some in the back end just in case we have a further tail down. Let's see how that plays out. I'm really excited, but let us know what you've been doing with your quant in the last week or so. Have you been buying? Have you been holding or not selling? What have you been doing? I'm really interested to know in the comments below. But we will for sure be chasing up on quant perhaps in a few days time. I'm particularly interested to see this weekly go into green, and these monthly and 3 monthlies all going to take a bit of time to switch around. So it's going to be a long haul, not just for quant but many projects out there. But do anticipate with quant as well the additional narrative aspect externally of all the things going on with CBDCs and their influence on that, because I do think that they will maybe do something slightly different to other projects out there. This project reminds me now similarly of like Ethereum a couple of years ago, those kind of price points, those kind of areas of where the technology is right now before the major uphaul of usability and things like that. So that would be a really cool move, would it not, to see quant pushing towards $1,000 in the next bull run. Let's see if that happens. Let us know your price predictions for 2022 as well. But guys, thanks for watching. We will indeed see you in the next quant video very soon. Take care. Bye bye.